The Byakugan sucks, I'm gonna say it. The more time one spends looking at the Byakugan and the abilities that Byakugan users are granted, the more you begin to realize that really anybody could do what they do. However, because what they do is kind of not all that effective, nobody else tries to do what the Huga do. See, whether it's the 8 trigrams technique, air palm, rotation, or even seeing in 360 degrees, there are not only other techniques in Naruto that are better variants of what's used by the Huga, but there's also very little stopping people whose last name is not Huga from learning the secret guarded techniques of the Huga. And thus today, I truly wanted to highlight how terrible the Byakugan ended up being by the end of Naruto. Every moment it was slighted, every jutsu that replaced it, and also, maybe more importantly than either of those two things, how a regular shinobi could train to use all of the techniques of the Byakugan to almost the same level of efficiency as a Byakugan wielder. And thus today, we got a whole lot of hating on the Huga to talk about, because today we're talking the Byakugan sucks. But before we get to breaking down what was supposed to be the most powerful dojutsu in all of Naruto, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. Not only do you get access to 30 more minutes of content every single week, but you'd also be helping me out with the variable laundry list of bills that these puppies are racking up. So, if Naruto is one thing, it's a story about moves, jutsus, and clans that were lost to the wayside as the story progressed. And in Naruto, no group of people suffers more heavily from being left by the wayside than the Huga. See, technically, one of the royal clans of Konoha, who were very early on in the story introduced as the strongest clan inside of Konoha, lost pretty much any and all relevance by the time that Shippuden rolled around. And really, if it weren't for Hinata marrying Naruto, the Huga clan would be as forgotten as some of their other peers in the royal clans of Konoha, like the Akamichi. Yes, out of the 3 clans in the Inishikacho formation, the Akamichi are the royal clan. Yeah, make that make sense. Now, really, when it comes down to it, the Huga clan lost any and all relevance the second that Neji defeated Kidomaru in a fight. As after Neji zapped Kidomaru using a chakra sting attached to one of his arrows to kill one of the members of the Sound Village 5, from that moment on, no Huga, up until Naruto the Last, had anything even remotely close to a relevant and/or important moment in Naruto's story. But how much was that loss in relevance the fault of the Huga clan versus the fault of their faltering dojutsu? See, the Byakugan is by far and away the most common dojutsu in all of the Naruto universe. And that's because not only is every single member of the Huga clan born with the Byakugan, be they side or main branch family, but also the Huga clan is massive. Undoubtedly one of, if not the biggest clan in all of Konoha. And therefore, it makes a fair amount of sense that the most common dojutsu in the entirety of the Naruto world couldn't be crazy broken. Kitty Soft Paws wasn't having it. But still, even acknowledging the fact that the Byakugan couldn't be broken on account of the fact that hundreds of people had access to it, and therefore if it was broken, the Huga would kind of be like the Uchiha, where they would be a separate, powerful entity inside of Konoha that existed kind of like a village of its own, with the ability to dictate what should happen inside of Konoha politically. And while this is kind of something that they do already, if the Byakugan was even 10% more powerful, the situation would be substantially worse for Konoha. And therefore, as you take a step back, you begin to understand why the Byakugan wasn't written to be extremely broken, like something like the Sharingan, but that doesn't necessarily mean the Byakugan had to suck. See, let's go ahead and examine what the Byakugan grants its individual users. See, the by far and away most talked about ability of the Byakugan is the fact that it grants its user near 360 degree vision. That is to say that a Huga member, upon activating their Byakugan, doesn't have 180 degree vision like we have, but rather can see in all 360 degrees, like one of those Insta 360 cameras. Now, there is technically a blind spot that shoots out from the back of their neck, and therefore, if somebody is aware of said blind spot, they're able to aim their attacks in that cone of darkness that the Byakugan user cannot see. However, outside of that relatively small weakness, a Byakugan user, upon activating their Byakugan, can see all around them up to 1 kilometer in all directions. Should a Byakugan user decide that they don't want to see in all 360 degrees, they can focus their attention to look in one direction and see dozens of kilometers away. On top of this, the Byakugan allows for X-ray-like vision that allow for the user to see the chakra network of whoever they're looking at. And thus, they can not only see how the chakra is flowing through somebody's body, to see if they're trying to do something like activate a Raikiri in their hand, or grow a fireball in their stomach that they're gonna blast out their mouth. But also they can identify and track the location of all 361 tenketsu points in somebody's body. Now, tenketsu points are basically like pressure points, spots on the chakra circulatory system that control the flow of chakra through the body, acting as gates of sort that can either stop or increase the flow of chakra once chakra is flown through them. And thus the Huga use their ability to track these 361 tenketsu points in combination with their gentle fist taijutsu techniques, which allow them to flow chakra into these tenketsu points to either shut down chakra flow as it tries to flow through this tenketsu points, or amplify chakra flow as it flows through this tenketsu point. However, that's not even all that the Byakugan does. Yes, it allows you to see where you're striking with your gentle fist as you're trying to do something like shutting down chakra flow to somebody's right arm so they can no longer use their Rasengan, but the Byakugan and its ability to allow you to see somebody else's chakra network also can allow you to do things like see if somebody's under genjutsu. Because if they are under genjutsu, you can see the flow in their chakra network is actually abnormal. And with that said, that's all the things that one can accomplish by using their Byakugan. However, here's the thing. None of those things that I just listed are things that you cannot achieve without the usage of the Byakugan. See, up first, let's examine Gentle Fist. Something that many of you would probably say is impossible to use without the Byakugan, and honestly, that's fair. How are you going to use a taijutsu technique that is focused on striking tenketsu points if you cannot see where those tenketsu points are? How would you know if you've hit a tenketsu point, if you've amplified chakra flow through it, or even paused chakra flow through it if you cannot see the chakra flow of the person you're striking? These are all incredibly good points. And I'm not going to say that somebody without the Byakugan would be able to use the Gentle Fist at the level of somebody with the Byakugan. However, comparable results could be achieved. See, the 8 trigrams technique, that is 8 trigrams, 34 palms, 64 palms, and 128 palms, 32, 64, or 128 times in a matter of less than seconds. I mean, we are talking about a flurry of blows coming in the blink of an eye. The higher number of the palm technique equaling more strikes probably occurring in the same time frame. Now, this barrage of tenketsu aimed points is usually meant to shut down the chakra network of somebody else. And as the weakest variation of the 8 trigrams technique is 32 palms, which still represents if all 32 of the blows hit 10% of your tenketsu points in your entire body being shut down and therefore not having the ability to pump chakra through them, being hit by something like 128 palms can literally shut down a third of your chakra flow throughout your body. And if that third is planned strategically, as it usually is, being hit with 128 coordinated tenketsu strikes could pretty much shut off chakra flow to your entire body. And as we know, chakra is life force in the Naruto universe. Fundamentally, being hit by 128 palms could literally kill you. And there's proof of this. I mean, Neji literally kills Kidomaru with one Gentle Fist zap of his chakra network because he's able to overwhelm his chakra network to such a degree that Kidomaru literally just dies. However, to use something like Gentle Fist, the Byakugan is hardly necessary. See, there are 361 tenketsu points in somebody's body. With something like 128 strikes into some opponent's body, you are bound to strike a couple. And here's the thing, you don't even have to blindly guess at the location of the tenketsu points. The tenketsu points in the chakra circulatory system, like all other anatomical processes in a human body in the Naruto world, have been mapped out. And not only has the entire chakra circulatory system been mapped out, but it's also widely known knowledge. In the same way that you or I understand where our bones or our veins are. And therefore you wouldn't even have to poke randomly, hoping eventually you strike one of these elusive tenketsu points. They are everywhere, and if you memorize the chart of where they are, you have a much better chance of striking them. On top of that, as a general rule of thumb, tenketsu points kind of follow the anatomical mapping of vital organs throughout a human body. They're found near the heart, the intestines, the liver, veins, arteries, those kinds of things. And therefore, even if you didn't have the chakra circulatory system memorized, simply directing Gentle Fist blows towards vital organs or veins or arteries would probably yield somewhat successful results in terms of striking tenketsu points at random. And while technically, yes, Gentle Fist users can strike tenketsu points to amplify chakra flow through a tenketsu point, that's almost never done. And in combat, it basically makes no sense. So while sure, you don't technically have any visual confirmation as to whether or not you hit somebody's tenketsu point and shut down their chakra flow, if you hypothetically did 128 strikes at somebody's right arm and they could no longer use chakra in that right arm, that's pretty good visual confirmation that you hit a couple of points. On top of this visual confirmation of the fact that somebody can no longer flow chakra through certain parts of their body, is it necessary if they're on the brink of death? Now, it's important to note here that the Tenketsu points are small. Well, yes, they're often depicted in Naruto when we see through Neji or Hinata's eyes and see the chakra circulatory system of somebody that they're fighting as rather large. In reality, they're about as big as a pen point, and therefore there would be some difficulty from a non-Byakugan user trying to use Gentle Fist to strike Tenketsu points, especially mid-combat, because the person they're going to be fighting against is going to be moving. On top of this, different people have different anatomy. They're taller, shorter, their body mass composition is different, and therefore finding a true strike into somebody's Tenketsu point and shutting it down would be pretty difficult without a Byakugan. However, like I said, I'm not saying that somebody would be able to use the Gentle Fist technique at the same level as a Huga. What I am saying is that it's kind of odd that nobody else in the Naruto universe decided to train in Gentle Fist even though they didn't have the Byakugan. Because like the Huga or the Taijutsu-based fighting style or not, landing 10 out of 64 blows on somebody's right arm would effectively shut off their ability to use chakra in that right arm. And while we very rarely actually get to see Gentle Fist used in an effective manner, as the only big important fights we ever really see from Gentle Fist users are Neji versus Hinata and Neji versus Kidomaru, with Neji versus Naruto not really counting all that much on account of the fact that even though Neji did hit Naruto with a flurry of chakra control shutting down Tenketsu strikes, Naruto was able to use Kurama's chakra to overrun the concept of his chakra system being shut down, and therefore we haven't really seen Gentle Fist used up close and personal in an effective manner. But it stands to reason, based off everything that we know, that if you're just trying to shut down chakra control to a part of somebody's body, then you definitely wouldn't need 64 or even 128 true strikes to Tenketsu points. And the idea of Gentle Fist being used by non-Byakugan users is literally cemented to be a good idea in Boruto on account of the fact that Boruto trains in the Gentle Fist techniques. Boruto, notorious non-Byakugan haver, is often shown training with either his sister Himawari, his mother Hinata, or his grandfather Hayashi. And while he does have access to the Jogan, his access to the Jogan is not only spotty, but we also don't know how the Jogan works. And yet, even though the Huga family knows that Boruto does not have access to the Byakugan, he's still trained in Gentle Fist technique, implying that in actuality, really the only reason that all of Konoha isn't trained in Gentle Fist is because the Huga protected it. See, the Huga are notorious for trying to keep all of their secrets and all of their abilities for themselves and themselves alone. It's literally why they created a caste system separating the main branch from the side branch family, because with that system, the side branch family could give up their lives to protect the main branch family, and when the lives of the side branch family members were lost, the curse mark on their head would seal away their Byakugan forever, meaning that even if their bodies were left behind on the battlefield in a losing effort to another village, that other village wouldn't be able to pry the Byakugan out of those dead Huga members' eyes. But it's not even just 8 trigrams, 64, 128 palms that other non-Hugas would be able to pull off. Pretty much every single Huga technique we've ever seen could be utilized by other ninjas without the Byakugan. The most clear-cut case being with Vacuum Palm, a technique that's only used by Hugas that fundamentally has nothing to do with the Byakugan at all. See, Air Palm or Vacuum Palm or whatever you call it is a Shippuden Huga technique, a technique that allows for the usually up-close and personal Huga to attack from afar. Now, the technique itself is incredibly simple. It's basically just a giant push of air. A giant push of air that is achieved by a Huga member condensing wind chakra into their hand and creating a vacuum of sorts that they then shove out with a massive amount of force. So much force that a combined effort of Hinata and Neji doing this technique right next to each other was able to repel a sweeping tail of the Ten Tails. However, fundamentally, this technique has absolutely nothing to do with either seeing somebody's chakra networks or the Byakugan. However, the technique is aimed at vital organs of enemies, and this vacuum shell, fired from the Huga member's hand, barrels into the vital organs of their opponents, shutting them down from a distance. Now, because this is just a pocket of chakra being condensed in a Huga member's hand and then fired at an opponent from a distance, it is technically invisible, and therefore it'll often hit the opponent of the Huga before they even know something's been fired at them. However, this ability to fire essentially a shotgun blast of Gentle Fist technique from a distance implies that in a way, 8 trigrams technique or Gentle Fist techniques are not as precise as we originally thought. See, because if just firing a vacuum shell at somebody from a distance is enough to shut down a multitude of Tenketsu points, therefore crippling their vital organs and taking them out of the fight the second that they're hit, why couldn't this principle of wide-sweeping chakra flow shutting down techniques be applied to somebody who couldn't necessarily see the Tenketsu points they were aiming at. See, because with Vacuum Palm, the Huga members are simply aiming at vital organs. And that ties back to the idea that we talked about earlier, that Tenketsu points are usually clustered around vital organs. And therefore, even if you don't have the anatomical chart of the chakra circulatory system memorized, as long as you know where the heart, liver, and lungs are, you should be fine. But it goes even further than that, because if we're being fully real, there's really no reason that non-Hugas shouldn't be able to use rotation. See, here's the thing. The Huga are technically granted an advantage when it comes to learning Revolving Heaven, or rotation, as every single Huga is born with the inherent ability to release chakra from all 361 of their Tenketsu points. This is because the Huga, who are inherently born with the Byakugan, have a greater understanding of chakra flow throughout the body, and therefore are born with a greater understanding of the chakra network and the Tenketsu points of a human body than any other person in any other clan. Therefore, this allows for usually just the clan head of the main family to release chakra from all of their Tenketsu points and spin at a high enough speed that chakra is fired out at such a velocity that it repels all incoming attacks, ensuring that even if somebody does know about the blind spot of the Byakugan, high-level Huga members have an absolute defense against attacks that may be able to slip beyond the purview of their all-seeing evil eye. However, your standard run-of-the-mill ninja can also release chakra from individual Tenketsu points. In fact, literally all ninjutsu is predicated on this idea. See, if Kakashi wants to make a Raikiri, he has to release lightning chakra from the Tenketsu points in his hand. If an Uchiha wants to use a great fireball technique, they have to build up chakra in their stomach and then release that chakra from a Tenketsu point in their mouth. If a ninja wants to walk on water or walk up trees or jump incredible distances, to be able to funnel their chakra into their feet, releasing it out of Tenketsu points in their feet. And therefore, while Hugas canonically have a better understanding of how to release chakra from all of their Tenketsu points, we've never really seen a non-Huga ninja try to release chakra from all of their Tenketsu points. Nothing explicitly says that your standard non-Huga ninja can't do that. See, many do speculate that the Huga have access to additional Kekkei beyond that of just the Byakugan, and one of those Kekkei allows for them to access all 361 of their Tenketsu points, meaning that there is a literal anatomical reason that only the Huga have access to that allows for them and them alone to release chakra from each and every single one of their individual 361 Tenketsu points. But nowhere is that explicitly stated. On top of this, there's jutsu used by people like the 3rd Raikage and the 4th Raikage when they activate their lightning cloaks that fundamentally operate under the exact principles of releasing chakra that covers your entire body. See, because if you had to answer the question of where does the Raikage's chakra release from when he's activating his lightning cloak, the only sensible answer is from his entire body. The Raikage have access to a jutsu that allows for them to coat themselves entirely head to toe in their own chakra, kind of like how the Huga have access to a jutsu that allows for them to release chakra from every single one of their Tenketsu points and spin covering their entire body and sometimes the bodies of others in a veil of protective chakra. Lightning Cloak and Rotation fundamentally work in the exact same way, with the only difference being that Lightning Cloak has an elemental release applied to it. And that's the thing, the more you begin to examine these Byakugan-only techniques and these Byakugan-based feats, the more you realize, oh, anybody probably could have done this. Even one of the most legendary Byakugan-based techniques we've ever seen, when Neji was able to kill one of the members of the Sound Village 5 simply by sending his chakra up the chakra string attached to one of Kitamaru's mouth arrows, probably could have been done by anybody with high enough chakra control. See, in this battle against Kitamaru, Neji takes an arrow to the shoulder. And while it looks like it's going to be wraps for Neji, he actually purposely took the arrow to the shoulder because he understood that Kitamaru had a string attached to every single one of his arrows, and that string fed back to Kitamaru's chakra network. And therefore, Neji purposely redirects the arrow to strike him somewhere non-vital so he could grab onto the string, send chakra down it, and shock Kitamaru's chakra system, killing Kitamaru and winning Neji the fight. But this isn't really a gentle fist technique. Like, yes, hypothetically, Neji, kind of like when he pokes into somebody's Tenketsu point, is sending chakra from his body into somebody else's to shut down the chakra flow of that person's body, but this simply implies that Neji's chakra just needs to come into contact with Kitamaru's chakra in order for Neji to overwhelm Kitamaru's chakra circulatory system and shut it down. Because, well, yes, the mouth and head are chock full of Tenketsu points, and shutting down chakra flow to somebody's brain, possibly through a Tenketsu point in their mouth, would be a pretty easy way to kill them. Neji, in this moment, is not striking with precision, and he doesn't have to. See, here's the thing. Gentle Fist is not the only technique in Naruto that is built on the idea of controlling somebody else's chakra circulatory system, as that is also the fundamental principle of how Genjutsu works. Genjutsu operates under the principle of somebody who's casting the Genjutsu genjutsu being able to control the chakra network of somebody else. And therefore, only those with incredible chakra control are able to be good at genjutsu, because in order to use genjutsu of any kind, your chakra control needs to be better than the person you're actively trying to cast genjutsu on. However, if your chakra control is better, then you're able to manipulate the 5 senses of the person who you're actively casting a genjutsu on. And therefore, this idea of manipulating somebody else's chakra network is not a new concept. And therefore, Neji sending his chakra into Kitamura's body and using his ridiculously high chakra control to essentially, from just one Tenketsu point, shut down the entirety of Kitamura's chakra circulatory system is kind of just like a deadlier application of genjutsu, a contact-based controlling of somebody else's chakra network because your chakra control is better. And while technically it's not this blast of chakra into Kitamura's mouth that kills him, Neji follows after the string, closes the distance, and pokes him a bunch. Still, time and time again, we're shown the Gentle Fist is not as precise a technique as we originally thought. But I know what some of you are saying. You're saying, but Nick, there's no replacement for seeing at 360 degrees. And yeah, no, I mean, like, technically you're kind of right. There is technically no exact replacement for seeing 360 degrees for kilometers all around you. However, there's some pretty good replacements. I mean, there are literally loads of sensory abilities that'll give you basically everything the Byakugan gives you without the optical strain of activating your Byakugan. See, whether it's Jiraiya's N-like bubble that he built around himself when the animal path he was battling against turned himself invisible, that allowed for Jiraiya to sense anything that entered into this bubble of chakra he made around himself. More generally, Sage Mode's ability to allow you to track the position of your opponent by following the nature energy that they're interacting with. Six Paths to Sage Mode's ability to literally allow you to track the location of somebody who's hopping between dimensions, or just straight up sensory abilities like the ones that belong to the Yamanaka that allow mid-tier Yamanakas to be able to track down one individual chakra signature from actual miles away, with high-tier Yamanakas like Ino being able to build out a sensory bubble that envelops all of Konoha, not only keeping track of every single chakra signature that pops in and out of Konoha, also alert wall guards if there's ever a chakra signature that is not registered in Konoha's chakra database the second that chakra signature comes into contact with the barrier around Konoha. And if you want to take the idea of sensory abilities even one step further, more impressive sensors than even Ino Yamanaka, like Naruto or Tobirama, are able to sense chakra signatures from literal countries away. And here's the thing, while there is massive utility to the Byakugan, and one of the first times we literally ever see the Byakugan used during the Forest of Death, we do see that while Hinata is able to see Gar from a kilometer away, we also see that Ki was able to sniff him out from a kilometer away, and that Shin was able to hear him from a kilometer away. And therefore, there is such a litany of sensory abilities in the Naruto universe, relying on the Byakugan is far from necessary. There's obviously also much rarer, but much more on-the-nose replacements for the Byakugan, like the Mind's Eye of the Kagura, an ability that belonged to the Uzumaki and therefore belongs to Karin, that allows her to, by closing her eyes and focusing on opening her third eye in her brain, track chakra signatures from dozens of kilometers away with such ridiculous accuracy that she's not only able to tell if two chakra signatures are related to each other, but also if one of those chakra signatures is doing something like lying. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, the Sharingan also has the ability to see through hard surfaces and to track chakra signatures. And while it can't do it at the level of the Byakugan, i.e. it can't show you the Tenketsu points in a body, we've already established that seeing Tenketsu points is not necessary to shut down the flow of chakra. And therefore, when it really boils down to it, there is nothing the Byakugan can do that other people and other jutsus can't. And that is genuinely one of the biggest travesties of Naruto. A dojutsu introduced with a ridiculous amount of promise that unfortunately lived up to none of it. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. Do you believe the Byakugan sucks as much as I'm saying it does, or do you think it lived up to some of its promise? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noty bell.